welcome back. Well, on this episode, we are going to make the jacket for the three-piece suit for Mr. After taking careful measurements, I determined that, again, we are adding extra length. This pattern is an older pattern. It's a reproduction. It's from Pattern Retrospective. It's a 1940s semi-hacking jacket. And so what I did is I ended up adding 3 inches in length. So I cut on the line. You can see here that I had to add my own grain lines in order to match things up, because there wasn't one that went through the lengthen or shorten line. And so one thing I found out is to use better tape, because my tape is lifting, and so my pieces are sticking together, or as I'm trying to unstick them, they're falling apart. Like this one here fell apart, so I have to retape it together. But you can see how I have my lines, how I put my grain line to line everything up with the grain line extension. Now this one has horsehair padding in the collar and in the second part of this front reaver, I guess it's called. So I've already cut that out. I've already cut my lining out. Everything's been extended 3 inches, and so the next step that we have is cutting out the main jacket and collar. And then I will be pad stitching the collar and the reaver section. I think those are the 2 sections or 3, that require pad stitching. And then I'll be doing more pockets. Yay! Hopefully they're not all my very favorite pocket, but maybe they'll all have, I think all but one pocket, the breast pocket on the left side, I think that one has a placket, and the rest are with flaps. So, all right, we're getting ready to get started now. I got all the pad stitching done. You can see the front reaver here. And then I went to add the pockets. Can I tell you? Swear word, swear word, swear word. Anger, anger, anger. Rip it out. Try again. After the 4th try, I said, I can do it myself. Because, the directions were less than stellar. And they wanted you to make the pocket before inserting it. And I could not for the life of me figure out how to do that. So the pockets are not pretty. They're wrinkly. I don't know what to do. So I decided to just move forward, because the other set of pockets are not any prettier. They're cut on the diagonal, so the jacket is this way, and so they're cut on a slant. And because they only gave you one line, I'm used to having it split several directions so that you can make it like a welt pocket and insert it and do all that stuff. But for some reason, I feel like I cut too far. And so therefore the underlining and pocket was showing, so then I had to bring it in, which made all these ugly wrinkles. Yeah, I think this is the worst one, and I might just put like a leather bound tablet, or just a leather notebook and a pencil in here, and he can pretend to write notes for his Henry Jones Sr. So I'm kind of frustrated. It took me 2 days to get 4 pockets done, and I like to sew pedal to the metal, and 2 days to do 4 pockets is super frustrating in my world. So I'm going to take a break, move on to something else. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to work on the rest of the jacket and pretend that those pockets are perfect, because I'm not pulling out all that pad stitching to redo this. I don't know if y'all know this, but I hate hand stitching. And pad stitching is nothing but hand stitching. And I'm trying to become friends with hand sewing. So I think I'm going to go to an FCA meeting. Because, you know, they sew everything by hand. And see what it's all about. I used to like to do Renaissance fairs. And I kind of miss being able to set up and have a place to sit down in the middle of the day at fair. And we have a local SCA group that's just reorganized themselves. I had met a lot of the people a few years back. And the head seneschal is still the same guy. And so he would really like to have me come for a visit. And I think that's what I'll do. And then I'll get back to work on this jacket. Because I think this is the hardest part. I think the rest of it is just sewing the back together and sewing the sides and putting a lining in and throwing some buttons on it and adding the sleeves and lining. And, you know, that's the normal stuff. These pockets have a bad word name in them. And, yeah. So, I'm going to head on out. I'll talk to y'all later. So after I did a fitting on Mister, I found that taking it in makes it feel better for him. And so I'm taking in an extra seam, a couple of inches here, down the center back, and both side seams. We're going to take it in at the waist a little bit. Fits him good across the shoulders, but everywhere else was kind of baggy. So I'm going to take it in, and then we will see how far this fits, and then I will take in the seams for the lining and start getting it to fit that way. Well, we've been working on this pattern retrospective semi-hacking 1940 jacket. And I've procrastinated putting it together because menswear is not my favorite thing. My husband likes to play, so I have to force myself to do it because he is not your average size man. He's 6'5", lots of muscles and belly, and he's long-waisted. So many things. So I've been putting the lining in the rest of this jacket, and this pattern company leaves a lot to be desired. So here is the pattern, the directions. Now the directions are less than helpful because it just tells you sizes, yardages, which is nice. Tells you the pieces. Unfortunately, the pieces are not marked for what we want. For example, this sleeve pattern says cut 2. Well, what they really mean is cut 2 of the fabric and 2 lining. But in order to find that information, you have to really search what little directions there are. It tells you here how to lay it out on different size material, but again, it doesn't tell you that certain pieces need, you know, which ones are lining, because in this one here, that lining doesn't show anything about the sleeves. So fortunately, I had enough fabric. It does tell you how to tailor it, how to do basting. It tells you how to do the darts, which most of the time I can figure out. But, you know, it also tells you how to pad stitch, which is really, really, really helpful because pad stitching is a new skill that I'm trying to learn. And then it starts coming into this, here's the directions, and here's how you put the front together. Then it does your welt pockets, which I'm not very good at, obviously. And then it says, here's how you put the back together, and then it says to put the collar on. Now the collar is a two-piece collar, but the pattern was incorrect because they had you cut like 3 or 4 collars, yeah. So you kind of have to really look at what you're cutting out and say, is this really something I'm supposed to do? And refer back to this many times. But it had me tack the pad stitched collar on, so I put that on. And then it says attach the upper collar. And so when you do that, it was very confusing. Because it says roll down the collar, and after you've turned it, unfold the hem and press. And I'm like, what hem? They never told you to hem it. So I kind of winged it. And I got my collar on. And of course, you know, me and my dark fabrics. But I got the collar on, and then I attached it with the lining, and you can see the, I don't know if you can see, those little valleys are where this is where the pad stitching is. So you can see the little puckers of where you attach the fabric. And then it tells you to do the sleeves. And it says, you know, here's what you do to the sleeves. What confused me was this piece here, because this doesn't show pad stitching. I thought that was the front facing. And I said, well, that doesn't make any sense if you don't sew it to everything else. No, that's the pad stitching. It just doesn't show the little pad stitching marks. And then it tells you for the lining. That's all the directions for the lining. And then it says make up lining sleeves way down here at the very last thing before you do buttonholes. So I kind of decided to do it my way. I don't know if this is going to be good or bad. But I went ahead and sewed my lining in after I sewed the collar. And now I'm going to tailor it. I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to edge stitch about 3/4 of the way around. And then I'm going to custom fit the sides to my husband like I did the outer part of the jacket before I finish up the bottom plackets. This has a double placket on each side of the, right about the hip joint. It's got the flaps there instead of a center back one. But yeah, I've got to get this done. So I procrastinated long enough. I've done a couple other projects that I will post here. One is a draping. I draped an outfit for my daughter, and then the event got canceled, so I haven't got to get a picture of her in it yet. But I will get this going and tailored, and then hopefully I'll get it on him for final fitting, and he'll pose. He hates the camera, but maybe I'll get him to pose in a full outfit to make sure everything's working right. And he'll do it for me for my video, so hang in there, guys. I'm going to keep on working. So when you're sewing sleeves, make sure you double check before you sew your seams that you have a right and a left side, because you don't want to sew the same ones, two duplicates, two right arms or two left arms, because then it just becomes a pain in the butt to try to fix. So once you have done your outer sleeve and you know that it's right, my suggestion is that you do your lining immediately afterwards while it's fresh in your head of everything that you just did. This way the sleeves are more likely to be duplicates, and you're not going to try to say, oh, what did I do? And I just find it easier to do them both at the same time for your major stitches. This one has a horsehair braid in the hem or in the wrist. So soon as I'm finished sewing up these linings, I'll be adding this horsehair braid, and it goes around the cuff of the sleeve. I don't know why they had you cut it so big. It just seems overkill, but we'll see. I think that we're going to end up cutting a lot of it off. I mean, that is a pretty big cuff there, so maybe we'll have just the right amount. We'll get there in a minute. Well, as I expected, the strips that they had you cut were too long. I have lots of leftover fabric. So what we're doing is, this is the hemline, and so we're going to put this above, and then this will be stitched up like so, and then the lining will come down and stitched into the horsehair. And so that will be how that sleeve will be finished, because the pattern had you cut the sleeve lining minus this 2 inches. So that's where we're at now. Okay, so I went ahead and put the lining in the sleeve before I put the sleeve in the jacket, because this is all hand sewn down, covering up the other half of that horsehair. And then they have you stitch the false closure here and fill the seams so that when you press it, you can put a buttonhole and a button here for a false opening. And then that will kind of trap all of that inside. So now to the other sleeve. So remember how I said do each sleeve at the same time, and you know, they look really nice until you realize that you put the buttons and buttonholes on the back sleeve instead of the front sleeve. And now you're going to spend the next few hours unpicking the buttonholes and the buttons. Thank God they're false, because I didn't cut the buttonhole itself, but all that time wasted. So yeah, I gotta tear all that apart so I can put them on this side and not that side. Oh, okay. Torn out, moved to the correct side, and redone. So now we're going to attach the sleeves. Hooray! Alright, newest update. I got the outer sleeves all set. I fixed and redid the buttonholes and buttons. And the next step that we're going to do is I'm going to insert a shoulder pad, and then I will be hand stitching in the sleeve lining because, you know, that's so much fun. And after that, it will be tack the other lining down, the rest of the jacket body, and a couple more buttonholes, only real ones this time, so I got to double check what I'm doing. And then give it a good press and hopefully get it on my husband here soon. So that's what today's project is. I'll keep you updated. Here are the shoulder pads. So the pattern has this piece, and it says to put a couple layers of batting. And so I've got 2 layers of batting, and just on its own, it pretty much has a little bit of a curve. I don't think my husband needs like shoulder pads because he's a broad-shouldered guy, but I'm going to put these in just to help give a little bit of body to the shoulder area so it doesn't slope so much. So that was pretty darn easy. That's probably the easiest part of this whole stupid pattern.